it's interesting that some people would go to a counselor because they trust them because they don't know them, and it
Right.
won't muddy up the rest of their lives.
Right.
And then some people definitely would only go to a counselor if they knew them.
Right.
You know, they more so trust someone that they know
Right.
well or feel like they can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. My other thought was, I think people neglect or push away the fact that if they do feel like they have a mental illness of any sorts, they push that back because of the isolation. And your pen, I think, says stigma.
Yeah.
No. You know stigma, right? But I think that the stigma that comes with it, and you said something that was key, and I was like, dang, I was so naive. Because not now, but I think before life happened, I had such a good experience in life that, I didn't, but like, in some ways, like, I kind of formed that in my mind.
Right.
And so, some ways I thought, yeah, I would never need something like that. Like,
Right.
I would never need counseling.
Right.
I would never need, and I remember, I remember having those kind of, like, thoughts. Not necessarily counseling, but kind of like that mentality of, like, yeah, I don't need really help. I can do this. I can manage that. And I think that's been my mentality.
I'm strong enough to deal with it.
And I think that's been my mentality. And friends would tell you, and they would laugh at me, that I never cry. Like, and I'm sure there's some reasons why. I don't really know. I haven't really thought about it too much. But, like, my tear ducts don't do what everybody else does. So I can really experience serious loss. And I have experienced serious loss. And my first response isn't breaking down with tears. Tears may come later, but it's not like it comes a lot. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, so it's kind of weird. But my point is, I think some of my mentality has been that whole, you said something like it's unrealistic to say that you'll go through this life and never need any kind of help. In my mind, I think not without verbally necessarily saying it, but I think I put that in my mind. Like, what do I need help for? If I look at my health chart, like, when I get a physical, when you go to the doctors and you have all those lists of things, and it's yes or no, I'm always like, nope, and sincerely nope, nope. So, like, even in recent years when I had kids and stuff like that, and health stuff started happening, life really did start happening, I'm like, why is my body breaking down? Like, I was never supposed to have a C-section because I was supposed to deliver vaginally. I mean, that might be too much. Sorry. But I was not supposed to have preeclampsia. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't supposed to go there because everything was always no. And I remember doctors always saying, I had about 2 or 3 different doctors since I was from childhood to adolescence to adulthood. And they always said, like, man, well, you're pretty healthy, huh? Like, you don't smoke, you don't drink. And meaning that, like, I didn't have anything going on other than normal cold or normal flu. So I think that mentality went with me into my mental state.
Right.
Why do I have a good family, quote unquote? You know, like, I was protected, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like, those things kind of like, what help do I need? And being naive. And then, life happens and circumstances happen and things get bad because it will. And now I'm sitting here like, yeah, I think I need some help. And I never would disagree with people who got help. I probably would even support them 100%.
Right.
But I would never support myself.
That you need
Right.
to do.
And I think that's some of the, like, understanding yourself, some of the being healthy as a person. I was probably very unhealthy, but I was really wanting everybody else around me to be healthy. If that makes any sense. Even when I was a kid, like, my brother, like, oh, I want him to be protected. I want, you know what I mean? Like, that sort of thing. But for me, I'm good. Like,
yeah, and I mean, I think society has built this stereotype that if you come from a 2-family home, and your parents been together, you have, almost like the perfect childhood of life. Right. Perfect childhood of life, and you're not going through anything. You're protected from everything, but it doesn't mean that things doesn't happen, even in that type of setting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have things that you're dealing with, and then it comes up as an adult, and then you're like, okay, all right.
I got some things that affect me,
Yeah, and you were being shielded,
until it was time.
Right.
And some of what we're talking about is like situational. In other words, there's different situations that happen that bring about that, oh, it's time for me to learn a new way of handling this, a new way of going through, gaining new perspectives. But there are some people who it is a chemical imbalance.
Yeah,
right.
It's not a situation
Sure.
that happened, and
Sure.
it can happen sometimes at certain stages. You know, the teen years when the hormones are already. Sometimes people get diagnosed with something, and it wasn't triggered by anything other than a chemical imbalance. And I might be opening up a can of worms now, but and medication is definitely helpful with that.
Right.
That medication is a whole other thing people don't want to talk about, don't want to do. Absolutely not. I'm like,
don't want to be looked at as
really?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, in my work, I have met people that so I've had patients that have schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar 1 and 2, whatever. These are thought of as a little bit more serious mental, but you would not know it.
Right.
They take their medication. They come in from their jobs, and they sit down and talk, and they go back to their work, and it's like, man, even when something is a little off, I've had a patient say something wasn't, right. He talked to a psychiatrist about, like, I'm not, I can tell something, the medication is, and sometimes if you gain weight, lose weight, all this kind of thing, you have to tweak it, right, your body changes. And he was astute enough, the psychiatrist took it lightly, he said. He took himself right to the hospital. I'm like, if you're not going to adjust it, I'm like, that's wonderful.
Because he knew his body.
Right. And I just think, like, that can be done. Like, people need to know, like, some people aren't trying to put you on a medication that's going to make you some kind.
Right.
No,
Right.
It can really help you get through life,
And
especially.
that's a whole part of ignorance and not knowing, about the medications or that field, per se. Because even me growing up, when we were going to grade school, I used to always have this. I used to have this stigma that when I would hear one of the kids say, "Oh well, such and such didn't take his medicine," and then you looking at him like, what you mean his medicine for what? And then, but we always would stereotype that person, and that's what has given people such complex, because you can't tell anybody because then they're gonna, make fun of you or people, especially the younger ones now, like the younger generation.
Right.
So
and they think like maybe you'll get addicted to it or something. I'm like, no. Have your child on his ADHD medicine, and then see when he's not on it. Oh, they're not addicted. It's totally out of their system.
Right.
And you can see the hyperness come there. I think that, and that might have been once upon a time. The medications have actually changed and improved, just like with anything else. There was a limited amount of stuff that you could take, like a lot of medicines now, like they're over the counter. Remember, your doctor had to write your prescription for Claritin or anything. You had allergies. It was like it was a big serious thing. You have to go to the allergist, get in the prescription. We all have allergies in my family, and but now it's all over the counter. Because they perfected it to the point that it's not that serious.
Yeah, but I think going back to the medication side and the stigma that comes, I think isolation. I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Isolation may come. Or people fear in isolation coming because of how we dealt with before, where Kelly said that when somebody said medicine when she was younger, she was like, what medicine? And so people fear that response, and that's partly why, like, I think that they don't want to take the medicine, or they don't want to be identified with it.
Right.
They may be taking medicine, but they don't want to be identified that they take medicine, nor do they want to be like, oh, that, when they're trying to deal with something or somebody talking to them and asking them questions about themselves, they don't want to disclose certain information about themselves because they're like, because that's personal, and they don't want people to think that, oh, because you have this issue, you're crazy.
Right.
I've seen one situation, this is at a church setting, where a girl shared her testimony of mental illness, and she actually shared, like, divulged information of, like, what that looks like for her. And I was, like, in shock almost, and she was saying, like, you know, she was just sharing her testimony of how she came to know Jesus, and then in that, how it didn't make everything better, but she's on medication and she's been helped now, which goes back to what you're saying. She's been helped, so it doesn't affect her as much anymore. But she does have seasons where if something's off, like you said, she is then affected. And she said, "Y'all know that by," and she named, and I was like, "Wow, like that." Like, it feels so personal, you know what I mean? But then also it feels like should she be telling us that?
Yeah, but if she had a serious food allergy, nobody would care.
If it was
peanut butter allergy, right. If that, y'all gotta get my EpiPen, you know, or if I'm a diabetic and my blood sugar is dropping, you know, hold on, guys, I need to get a couple orange juice. Everybody takes that in stride.
And I also think like that type of bonus comes with her walk with Christ. or growth.
Yeah.
Because it takes a strong person to come out and be so transparent.
Sure.
Like there's things that I've been transparent about, but like to go on social media and put it out there, like I can share it with my church, but to put it out there like for the world to see, I think I haven't got to that point yet.
Sure.
But I definitely I've known somebody else who did the same exact thing, and I was just, you know, I was proud of her because that was a big step, but it also opened up eyes to, you know, other people who saw her as being so perfect, have everything in order, you know, got it all together. And she's like, hey, I suffer from mental illness, and she has a college degree. So I would like for that, you know, that type of platform to be, you know, for them to have a platform for stuff like that, because people need to know that this is not going to handicap you. You know, it doesn't stop here. But if you don't take those steps to get the help that you need, then you're always going to be in a downward spiral. So,
and not to go too far in, but I think that goes back to, we did a Bible study yesterday here actually. And it was on part of it was passions, but then what got incorporated into that was, which was interesting, being your unique self.
Yes.
And I think that is part of that. Like when God talks about making you intrinsically in your mother's womb, while he's making a fallen person, because we are under the fall, so it's not that ideal sense, but at the same time, like, he's made you with even the imperfections for a reason. And I'm coming to wrestle with that and understand that even within myself, like with dealing with learning disability, like I realized, like, like the Lord made me that way on purpose. Like, and there's certain things that I'm grabbing for from him that I wouldn't necessarily grab for from him if I was okay. You know what I mean? If I didn't have this learning disability, I wouldn't necessarily seek him the way I'm seeking him now. Nor would I see his hand in my life. So I think mental illness has its place even in how we relate to it as Christians, because we can see something about the power of God in our illness, even when the illness doesn't get better.
Amen.
Because I think sometimes we think we see the power of God only if the illness gets better. But what if it doesn't get better? But what if he teaches you how to deal with it and grow in it and take your medicines in it and talk to people in it and all these other variables? So,
I think the main thing I got from what you said that the young lady said was her identity is in Christ and nothing else.
That's right.
And I think we're not quite comfortable with that. So therefore, I do want my identity to be a little bit about wife, mother, this profession or whatever, and I look a certain way in front of everybody. But she's saying, you know, it's just me and Jesus. My identity is in him. So what could any of that change? What could any circumstance change? My position in him. You know,
I'm not perfect, but I'm perfectly made through the eyes of Christ.
Come on, man.